Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. Well, that was a really interesting conversation that we had with MPP Roman Baber, who is an independent member of the legislature in Ontario because he was removed from the Progressive Conservative Caucus by Premier Doug Ford over his position in regards to the government's strategy for COVID-19. And he thought it was the lockdowns were inappropriate, and he thought it was going to be too damaging both to the economy as well as what he reminded us earlier in the show, to public health, because of the disproportionate attention to COVID-19, such that all the other things that our hospitals and doctors do were not having attention paid to cancer patients he identified, et cetera. And then we talked a lot about vaccine passports and vaccine mandates. And I wanted to talk about that a little bit because, I disagree with some of what Roman talked about. But number one, I really think that he's got an opinion that needs to be heard. And number two, some of what he talks about, I actually agree with. And so I think it's worth really thinking this through. And I worry that it's become so political that you're sort of with us or against us. You're sort of with the general point of view, or you're against the point of view. And I think too much of what's happened on this whole COVID-19, physical distancing, wearing of masks, vaccines, vaccine mandates, vaccine passports has become so incredibly polarized and partisan that we're not actually thinking things through. And there's a couple of reasons why I think this is worth thinking through. So, I was reading The Economist magazine and had a really fascinating analysis of infection and mortality with COVID-19. And they say that there is about 3.8 billion people that they think that have had one dose of the vaccine worldwide, which is a significant amount. But then they go on to say that there's a whole bunch of people that have been infected that they believe, based on the scientific research, have immunity to the virus that aren't being counted in the people that are effectively vaccinated or immune. And this is a point that Roman made, is that in the vaccine passports or vaccine mandates, we're not taking into account the people that have been infected and have recovered, because logically and scientifically, those people should also be should have some immunity. By me saying immune, I was being overly descriptive, overly generous. They're not immune, but they have some immunity, if not hopefully really good immunity against catching the virus. And then the economists went on to say that that they think, based on their analysis of excess deaths that occurred worldwide, which they said was significant during the last year, and they think that there's 1.4 billion to 3.6 billion people that they estimate had the virus, because there's 16 to 20 million extra deaths during the year. And using deaths divided by the mortality rate, they come up with this incredible amount of people that they think actually had the infection. And so they say that they think that the actual number of people that had the infection had COVID-19 was 6 to 15 times greater than the official count. 6 to 15 times greater than the official count. It's an astronomically high number. But what that says is that there's a whole bunch of people that are walking around with immunity, or some level of immunity, that we're not taking into account. And Roman's comment was that the vaccine passports that are potentially, if we restrict people from working, if they don't have the vaccine, if they had the virus, recovered, and didn't get the vaccine, but have the immunity, they're going to be prejudiced against and not allowed to enter an arena, enter a restaurant, and in a lot of cases, not be able to go to work. And that's a really interesting and potentially traumatic for them result that I think we need to take into account. So point number one is that Roman thinks that there's a whole bunch of people that have had COVID-19, have recovered, have some level of immunity, that logically and scientifically should have immunity equal to, if not frankly greater than, the vaccine, and are forgotten in our current vaccine passports and vaccine mandate analyses. And just to talk about the logic, if what you're doing with a vaccine is giving someone a small amount of the virus, or a dead amount of the virus, or a RNA produced spike protein that mimics the virus, all to create a immune response and build up antibodies. Logically, if someone has the virus, they've got the antibodies. They should have developed the antibodies because they've recovered. And while I guess there hasn't been enough scientific research to prove that definitively, in lots of other diseases, viruses, et cetera, this is what exactly people think. And so I think it makes sense here. And why, if someone actually has had the virus, recovered, and have that immunity, if we could prove they had the immunity, and I think most scientists believe they had that immunity, why would we force them to get the vaccine, to have even more immunity? And maybe it doesn't actually add more immunity. I don't know. Anyway, so that's point number one. Point number two is that Roman argues, if people are willing to take a test and prove they don't have the infection, why are they precluded from having a job in a setting that is mandating that people have vaccines? And I think that's a pretty good argument. If someone can prove definitively with a test that they don't have the infection, and do it on a repeated basis every 2 days or whatnot, I can sort of understand that they're not going to be accepted to go into an arena to see a hockey game or a basketball game or a concert, or maybe even to go to a restaurant where you're trying to, where you don't have to go there. It's something you'd like to do. But when it's something you have to do, like go to work to make some money, to support your family, to restrict those people from doing so if they're not infected, because they can prove it by way of a test, which up until recently, that's what you had to do. You had to take a test. I had to go to the United States. I had to take a test. I flew back to Canada. I had to take a test. I had to go to the hospital. I had to take a test. Up until recently, was okay. You had to take a test. So why are we now changing it? And, this has become even, I think, more topical because of this ruling in the House of Commons that you have to have the vaccine to represent your people in the House of Commons, and proving that you don't have the infection by way of a test is, for some reason, now deemed not enough. And when you think about that, there are areas of this country that voted for certain members, and I may disagree with those people. And frankly, let me state it clearly, I do disagree with them. I think vaccines are very efficacious and very safe. I'm double vaccinated. My whole family's double vaccinated. I encourage anyone I talk to get double vaccinated. That said, there are areas in this country that voted for people that clearly are of a principle, of an ideology that is against the vaccines, whether they campaigned on it completely openly and publicly or not. And people voted for them. Those people are the elected representatives of those people. They are supposed to go to the House of Commons and represent those people. And we've got a ruling now that says they can't go into the House of Commons and represent their people. I think that's wrong. And then Roman makes the argument that there are people that work in long-term care facilities that are not going to be able to go to work, and that we actually potentially risk having lower employment, lower workforce, such that we actually might harm resident care if we restrict all those that haven't taken the vaccine from employment. And the TTC announced that they may have to cut schedules or routes because they're implementing a rule that you got to be vaccinated. I've got to think that this is wrong. If they can prove by a test that they don't have the virus, why can't they go to work? Again, I think they should get the vaccine. But some of them may have been infected, and some of them may be physically distanced, spend a lot of their time isolated, and wear masks all the time, and so therefore have low risk of getting the infection, and are proving they don't get the infection by way of a test. Why are we taking away their opportunity to create a living? And I guess I think there's a final point here, and that is that the premier has announced that he thinks all this is going to go away in March, the requirements for masking, the requirements for vaccines, the requirements for passports as well. And so if I was vaccine hesitant, and I'm not, but if I was vaccine hesitant, almost what that's done is that said, I don't have to do it because I only have to wait till March. And I think it was a mistake for him to make that announcement, but I think what it does is potentially increases the likelihood that some vaccine hesitant people aren't going to get the vaccine. And the premier's sort of given them the out in that regard. And so for all those reasons, I really think we should think long and hard. And I guess I think about it differently between want to do versus need to do. If I want to go to a hockey game and want to go to a restaurant or want to go to a concert, I kind of agree with the idea of a vaccine passport, that you got to show that you got a vaccine, because it's not something you need to do. But if it's going and making money at a job that I've got at an office or a long-term care or at a hospital or a TTC, and I maybe feel a little bit differently about the hospital than any of the others, I have to be frank about. But I, particularly if we have the statistics that suggest that a lot of those people that haven't been vaccinated might actually have immunity because they actually had the infection. And they then are willing to prove by way of a test on a fairly regular basis, like every second or third day, that they don't have the infection. I don't think we should be precluding them from earning a living. I really don't. And on that regard, I think Roman Baber has got a really good point. And I hope he keeps on arguing it. I'm not an expert. I'm not the right person that should be making the decision in this regard. But I think people like Roman Baber are getting educated, making the argument, and should be listened to. And smarter people than I, that are more knowledgeable than I, should be making a judgment, at least considering that point of view. And based on what I've heard, I would be saying vaccine passport for things that you want to do, like restaurants or arenas, but vaccine passport or negative tests for employment, because people have a right to work and earn a living, and we shouldn't be precluding them because they don't get the vaccine from that right if they can prove they don't have the virus. And I think to do otherwise means that we're effectively, handicapping them in some way. We're going to have to compensate them for unemployment, and they're employable, and our unemployment level is at the lowest it's ever been. We need more workers. We shouldn't be causing, this restriction in the workplace. It's going to harm our economy, and it's going to harm these people and their lives. And I want to encourage them to get vaccinated, and I want to encourage them to be responsible citizens in society. And if I want to have dinner with them, I want them to be vaccinated. But if they can prove they're free of the infection, I don't know. I think that they should still be able to go to work. Anyway, that's my 2 cents on the topic. This is the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960 AM. On 960 AM every Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock. You can stream me online at www.saga960am.ca. You can get my podcasts and videocasts on briancrombie.com. You can also get them on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram. You can get my podcasts on Audible, Apple, and Speakeasy. And I love this vehicle to interview fascinating people and to have an opportunity every once in a while to give you my point of view. Hope you listen. Thanks.